NASA finally realizes why Starship is better than the SLS rocket. This is going to be a very big year for spaceflight, as two entirely new rockets are ready to make their way up. Yes, they're currently looking to put humans back on the moon. On the other hand, SpaceX is working on its own plans. On March 17th, NASA set to roll its hulking Space Launch System, SLS rocket to a launch pad at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Until then, the rocket had been under construction in NASA's Vehicle Assembly Building. This rocket is the backbone of NASA's new human spaceflight program, Artemis, which is currently aiming to put humans back on the moon by 2025. In this video, we're going to talk about how NASA has realized that the Starship is better than the SLS rocket. We're going to put the spotlight on the characteristics that make Starship superior. Do watch the full video as we explain each and every aspect of both of these giant rockets. NASA made history in 1969 when Apollo 11 sent humans to the moon. It hopes to do the same in 2025 when Artemis 3 sends the first woman and the first person of color to the moon. To do this, it's going to use a giant, under-development rocket known as the Space Launch System, also shortly known as SLS. SpaceX, on the other hand, has gold of its own. They're testing the Starship, which is a fully reusable rocket, having the capability of sending humans to the moon, Mars, and beyond. Over the past year or so, the world has watched as its upcoming rocket Starship has taken form, going through several prototypes on sometimes explosive test flights. But first, SpaceX plans to use the Starship to send Japanese billionaire Yuzuka Misawa and a crew of specially chosen passengers around the moon. This mission was originally announced in 2018 with a 2023 launch date. However, the Starship has yet to complete an orbital test flight. Meanwhile, NASA took a historic step towards launching the SLS rocket with a wet dress rehearsal after rolling out its massive rocket on Friday, March 18th. Despite their different goals, the SLS and Starship serve surprisingly similar purposes. Even more surprising is how NASA plans to use the Starship to land the astronauts on the moon. Since these SLS and Starship rockets have the same goal, we know that like NASA's SLS, Starship is the foundation of SpaceX's plans for human spaceflight missions to the moon and Mars within the decade. Let's take a look at the features of these two rockets and decide which one's better. The only common thing between these two rockets is that nothing like either of them has been seen since the mighty Saturn V rocket, which enabled the historic Apollo missions. So they very well live up to the definition of one of a kind. If we talk about SLS, it's a little complicated because it's expected to come in various combinations. Its first variation, which is Block 1, will stand at 322 feet tall and is going to weigh 5.75 million pounds. When it launches, Block 1 will produce 8.8 million pounds of thrust. This is the kind of power it's going to need when it goes into space. It has the power which is 15% more than Saturn V produced. It'll be able to send more than 27 metric tons, or 59,500 pounds, into orbits beyond the moon. The other variation of SLS is Block 2. This is bigger and more powerful than Block 1. It'll produce 9.5 million pounds of thrust and will be able to lift more than 46 metric tons, or 101,400 pounds, to deep space. Starship, on the other hand, is bigger and more powerful than SLS. It's set to be taller than SLS, standing at 394 feet with its cargo and booster stage combined, according to SpaceX. Its super heavy booster stage will be able to provide 17 million pounds of thrust. To this day, Saturn V remains the more powerful rocket out there, but Starship seems to beat that giant by a wide margin. Musk said that the ship will use the largest heat shield, which is going to protect it when it enters Mars's atmosphere at speeds of around 17,000 miles per hour. Orbital capacity figures publicly available on the NASA and SpaceX website aren't directly comparable. For example, NASA says SLS will be able to launch 46 metric tons to deep space, while SpaceX says Starship will be able to launch more than 100 metric tons into low Earth orbit. A NASA spokesperson told Newsweek that deep space is defined as anything from the moon onward. They added that the SLS Block 1 configuration can send 95 metric tons, or about 210,000 pounds, to LEO. This is complicated by the fact that SLS is intended to go straight to its destination, while there are plans for Starship to reach Earth orbit, refuel via another Starship, and then continue its journey, which would boost its range and payload capability. Both SLS and Starship are intended to deliver humans or cargo to the moon, Mars, and possibly even further. NASA intends for SLS to launch the upcoming Artemis moon missions later this decade. although NASA has selected SpaceX to use Starship for the lunar descent phase, which will actually deliver astronauts to the moon's surface. In terms of cost, there are a lot of uncertainties and ambitious figures flying around. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk expects Starship to be far cheaper than SLS in the long run. In a press briefing in February, he said he was highly confident that within a few years, Starship launches could cost less than $10 million. This would be a very low launch cost, even compared to the price to launch its smaller Falcon 9 rocket, which is $67 million, but it's unclear how achievable it is. The cost per launch of SLS is also unclear, but in 2019, it was estimated by the White House Office of Management and Budget to be over $2 billion, though NASA has proposed to halve launch costs, and in March this year, NASA Inspector General Paul Martin said it would cost $4.1 billion for an Artemis mission, Ars Technica reported. Another point that should be kept in mind is that cost is also tied into the fact that SpaceX intends Starship to be reusable, while the SLS isn't intended to be reusable. I hope you guys are enjoying the video so far. Why wouldn't you? We're talking about humans traveling to the moon and Mars. Do you think this is going to be a successful mission? Leave your opinion in the comment box, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon. Let's continue. If you're wondering when they're going to launch the rockets, well, the SLS rocket was originally meant to launch in March, but has since been delayed. The wet dress rehearsal is continuing through March and April as NASA tests various aspects of the rocket. At the moment, the agency is saying that the earliest launch will be in May, though it could easily be pushed into summer 2022. As far as the Starship is concerned, SpaceX is still testing the rocket, but Elon Musk claims it'll launch sometime in 2022 for an orbital test. Like with the SLS, delays are still possible for the Starship, and getting the rocket to a place where it'll be capable of making trips to the moon or Mars is ways away. Another important thing that we'd like to talk about in detail is that the SLS is not a reusable system. The Starship, on the other hand, aims to be SpaceX's first fully reusable rocket, the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy heading expendable second stage. This is actually the main reason why Starship's flight cost could end out 200 times cheaper per flight. As CEO Elon Musk said in 2019, a giant reusable craft costs much less than a small expendable craft. Being reusable is actually one of the things that makes Starship better than SLS. Other reasons are pretty much evident in detail about the features of the two, and we've covered that in detail in the video. As far as going to Mars is concerned, yes, both of these rockets have the capability to go on to Mars. NASA plans to use its learnings from the Artemis series of missions to better develop its Mars missions, using the Block 1B and Block 2 configurations to complete the missions. SpaceX has an ambitious goal of sending the first humans to the surface sometime in the 2020s. So do you guys think that Elon Musk and NASA will be able to get their rockets to the destinations they have in mind? Don't hesitate to leave your opinion in the comment box, and stay tuned for upcoming amazing videos.